Morning. Wait till everybody's on screen.
I can't start my video because it says the host has stopped it. Now the host is saying start my video. Okay.
There we go.
The heck?
And I think we probably have everyone, do we? Looking pretty good. So I will call the meeting to order, confirm that we have quorum and everyone present. And welcome to the last meeting of 2021. My guess is nobody's really sad about that. Councillor Stone, would you please read the land acknowledgement statement for us today?
Sure. I would like to respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe under the terms of the Robinson-Huron Treaty number 61 of 1850 and the Williams Treaties of 1923. We commit to acknowledge, learn, educate, create opportunity, honor sacred spaces, and take actions toward real truth and reconciliation in support of our commitment to walking the path together in respect, peace, and harmony for future generations.
Thank you. I have a resolution moved by Deputy Mayor Alcock, seconded by Councillor Withey, as recommended that the General Committee meeting agenda dated Wednesday, December 15th, 2021 be adopted as printed and circulated. All in favor? That carries. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we are going to start with a deputation today from Suzanne Martineau with Muskoka Community Land Trust. And Suzanne, are you with us?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for this invitation. Christopher Stevens is the one doing the presentation on behalf of the Muskoka Community Land Trust this morning, and I believe he is present.
Okay, welcome, Christopher. And whenever you're ready,
okay,
the floor is yours.
Just going to share my screen. Okay. So just to start, good morning, Council, Deputy Mayor, and Your Worship, Mayor Terziano. Thank you for meeting with me today. I've got something really exciting I think I want to talk to you guys about, which is the Muskoka Community Land Trust, or the MCLT for short. So in this presentation, I kind of want to do four things. I want to talk first about what a community land trust is, how it works, why it works. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about why Muskoka needs one, why Huntsville would benefit from one. And simply it's about increasing the supply of affordable, smart value housing in our community. Next, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, who is Muskoka Land Trust? Who are we? What our vision is. And then there will be a few asks and we'll go over sort of our business plan, our budget, and where we're currently at. So let's just start with what a community land trust is. So a community land trust is a not-profit organization that holds and owns land and then leases it out for community purposes. Now, historically, it's been used for many different purposes, agricultural purposes, but the central function currently globally is it's being used to increase the supply of affordable and attainable housing in communities. So what happens in this case is that land is secured by a nonprofit and they lease it out. Now, there's a ton of different ways this can take shape. There could be rental housing, there could be shared equity ownership, and there could be co-ops on the house. But the general theme is that the community land trust will always own the land. So in this diagram, you can see what sort of the shared equity model would look like, where, oops, let me go back. A new resident would buy a home and they would lease the land. They would lease the land from the CLT. And the new homeowner would buy a fixed rate to the pay to the community land trust based on their income, and the CLT would permanently own the land. So the current homeowner would then sell the home for a price set by the CLT, earn a portion of the increased value of their home to put a down payment on another home, but that allows the house to remain affordable in perpetuity. And so really it's about taking the rising value of land and putting it back into the community itself in every case. So like I said before, a community land trust can take a lot of different shapes, but the general theme is that the community land trust owns and leases out the land. So regardless of the method of occupancy, there's always an affordability mechanism. In the model we just discussed, the shared equity model, the mechanism is around the resale mechanism, limiting resale value, making sure people have enough to put money down for the next house, but also keeping that money to make sure it's affordable for the next renters or buyers. In a rental situation or a head lease situation, there's usually ways of subsidizing rental rates. And then in a co-op situation where there's generally mixed rates of rentals and they're purchasing shares into a co-op, in that case, the affordability mechanism is also subsidized rental rates. So just to give an example, Councillor Weeb, of a few months ago, you did an excellent presentation on a potential small home project in Huntsville. And we just thought hypothetically, how could a community land trust operate? How could this model, apply here? And so what would happen in this case is you'd have a small parcel of land that the community land trust would secure and retain over time. And the land is typically through donation, and it'd be held for a nonprofit. And then the MCLT or the CLT would partner with end user organizations. So the organization I work for is Community Living Huntsville. So hypothetically, Community Living Huntsville maybe has an interest in renting or purchasing some of these accessible properties. And then the MCLT would operate on income and land lease fees, and then potentially shared equity from resale agreements. And then no matter what the model was, there would always be an affordability mechanism that would ensure perpetual long-term affordability. And so it would create housing ideally for certain target populations, seniors, first-time home buyers, low to medium income families, people living with a label of a disability or of a mental illness. So people who are currently made most vulnerable by the affordable housing crisis in our town and in our district. So a CLT in principle is really just about owning the land and managing and being stewards of the land to ensure that it furthers community purposes, like that it furthers the goals of the community. So in this case, I want to say that a CLT would benefit Muskoka. Now, the Muskoka Community Land Trust was born out of the district housing task force, the affordable model, it's escaping me now, alternative funding models subcommittee of the housing task force. And so it would benefit Muskoka because it would increase the supply of smart value housing, and it would create sustainable long-term eco-friendly housing, and it would create a development of partnerships and programs throughout the district and improve the quality of life in the community. So for example, in Huntsville's official plan, the town has agreed to work with the district in achieving a smart value housing target goal of 25% of all new residential units. And in the official plan, the town has also recognized an immediate need to increase smart value housing. I mean, I don't think I need to defend this premise to you. We all know that we need more affordable housing. And community land trust would be one way of going about it, and a really effective way of ensuring long-term affordability. So who is the Muskoka Community Land Trust? So like I said before, the Muskoka Community Land Trust, it was created through the Housing Task Force in the district. And currently it's a nonprofit organization. We incorporated in September, and it's managed by community members, local agencies. And what we're ultimately doing is working together to build attainable housing for just, healthy, and importantly, inclusive and accessible neighborhoods. So our values focus on community building, diversity, inclusion, and it's well documented that the shortage of affordable housing affects certain vulnerable groups more than others. So seniors, people with disabilities, people with mental illnesses, people who are experiencing homelessness, women fleeing domestic violence. So as such, the Muskoka Community Land Trust is interested in partnering with community groups and so we can address the housing instability of these target populations that are most vulnerable in our community. But it wouldn't just be those populations either. So ideally, our plan is to acquire, to hold and manage land for the purposes of providing affordable housing opportunities for community members. That's really if I just had to summarize it really, really quickly. So in terms of the timeline, we've incorporated, we're in the process of raising capital and securing resources. We're also starting to interview potential board members and expand the expertise on our board. And we're planning on hiring a manager and administrator. And this is, I say that community outreach and awareness is ongoing. That is me doing that portion of the work right now. Good news. So the federal government has long recognized the need for land assembly solutions to affordable housing. So something like community land trusts. And Muskoka Community Land Trust, I will be happy to say, has recently received a substantial grant from the CMHC to develop our vision and to build the administrative infrastructure and legal infrastructure that a community land trust would require. So council members, you each have a copy of this. I won't go step by step through this process. Instead, I'll come to the part where what we're kind of going to the various lower tier and the district and what are we asking for. So there's two sort of sections of what we're asking for. The first part is really infrastructural and administrative. We're looking for lists of municipally owned land for donation and development. We're looking for a town of Huntsville point person to support this organization. And we're looking, of course, always for potential partnerships and grant opportunities. And like I said before, we're growing our board members and we have an excellent foundation of board members with a various expertise, but we're always looking to expand that. And then we're asking for financial contributions, 3 years of operational funding for 2021, 22, and 23. So we are going to ask the district for $60,000 and then each of the lower tiers for $10,000 over the next 3 years. We really look forward to partnering with you and in the successful long-term solution to the housing crisis in Muskoka. And with thanks from the steering committee, thank you for listening to my presentation today.
Thanks, Christopher. I suspect there'll be lots of questions. So if you're ready, I'm going to go to council and start with Deputy Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Christopher, for a great presentation. I've heard Suzanne a couple of times before, and I still learn every time I hear the presentation. You have a bit of a different, some different information, so that was great. And of course, that I'm a big supporter of the land trust model. And for all of the reasons that you talked about, I really love the fact that you referenced our official plan as well as the district official plan. So you're drawing on all of where there's synergy, right? So here's my question, and as I said, I prefaced with how much I'm a supporter, and I would hope that our municipality would do what it can to support the ongoing operation. You used the example of the land in Huntsville. So the Community Land Trust would own that land, and then rightly you pointed to a third party such as Community Living. And one of the things that I think some of us have been grappling with or trying to get our heads around is that middle level, which is who actually develops the housing. How do you make that happen? So you've been given the land by us, and community living buys in and says, we're here to lease, purchase, whatever it is, 5 or 6 homes. How do those homes, how are they created? And that's for some of us where we're trying to, the land trust that I'm familiar with, the one in Toronto Island, for example, all of the homes were built. So it was a case of land trust is put in place. It holds the land. Owners already own their house. So it was a matter of legality and figuring it out. But in this case, the homes are not built. So how do we square that one? Who does that? From the land trust, who does that?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Alcock. So I actually have sort of 2 answers to that question. The first answer is, so that was a hypothetical scenario. So we're of course open to the idea of acquiring land where construction does not need to happen and development does not need to happen. And I mentioned that the CMHC grant that we received recently, that's actually for a sub-project of the Muskoka Community Land Trust, which is the GREAT project. It's an acronym. Anyway, it's actually the project lead of that is a local developer, the Fourth Pig. And they're an eco-friendly, affordable housing developer. And they have designs that are, they've been in design with these eco-affordable homes. So we are in conversation with, so that project is basically being led by a local developer.
Quick follow-up, if I may.
Yeah, certainly.
So, and I appreciate that. So that local developer will be funded, hopefully, to come up with a development proposal. So I will go back to it and say, which is great. It's another step. But how do you engage whoever is going to build? Who does that? And how do you get that from Fourth Pig to who builds? Because unless Melinda's planning on building, that's the part I still, because it's an awkward one, that's what I think I've heard from people. They're struggling with how to bridge that gap, right?
And admittedly, at this stage in the project, that's something we're working towards. So we're constantly looking to grow our partnerships and community to be able to give a more definite answer to that question. Right now, sorry, Nancy, I didn't want to cut you. Oh, sorry, Deputy.
No, I appreciate that response. Okay. Absolutely, Christopher. Okay. I get it. It's new, and these are the big questions. But again, I'm incredibly supportive, and I appreciate all of the work you guys are doing.
Councillor Weeb.
Thank you, Worship. Through you, thanks for the presentation. Like Nancy, I'm coming around to this idea of the land trust. I think that when I think of the long-term horizon, I think that this could be a really great strategy because in the short term and the medium, in all terms, it's very difficult for houses to be built and meet that affordable scale, right? So I'm really trying to take the long view on it. The short view is similar to what Nancy was talking about, and that is, how does if the CLT is looking at raw land, what's the mechanism for which people can acquire? How would they be able to acquire financing in order to build? Because acquiring financing to build a typical house is difficult as it is. So how would it work given the scenario that I laid out with smaller houses? How would it work if someone wanted, how would they get a mortgage in this type of scenario where they don't own the land?
Can I address that question? Thank you, Christopher. Thank you, Councillor Weeb. My understanding is there are financial institutions out there that do lend against homes that are built under this model. So we would be working with cooperatives like the Kawartha Credit Union. When we put a project together, of course, we would have to do a fairly strong capital campaign, work out all of the details of the budget of that project, right down to what that land lease would look like. And then when we get those numbers all organized, then we would approach different lenders in that scenario, and people could obtain a mortgage. So we would, like any process, have a down payment on it. If it's a share equity home, have a down payment on that home, and then move forward with the building process. Yeah.
So if I can follow, yeah. So would it be fair to say that the land trust would participate in the mortgage process?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That is crucial. So it would be the land trust that would be moving forward with coordinating every aspect of the budgeting and the finances on that project. It's not, again, independent ownership that would go out unless, I mean, we would be looking at a project base, not a one home base at a time. We'd get that whole model organized as far as potential financing.
Councillor Stone.
Thank you. I'm hugely intrigued by this, like you all, and the demand is huge. I'm still a little confused, as the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Weave have mentioned. Can you walk me through a few scenarios? We've talked about how somebody might get some financing, but who owns the house? What about the profit margins and the division of the sale? Walk me through a couple scenarios to help me understand.
So I don't know, Suzanne, would you like to take this, or am I good to?
Let me give it a try for share equity. So what would happen, let's say, just as an example, we start with a small house that we could build environmental eco-construction, maybe even prefab, I don't know, but let's say we can get that model going affordably. So $200,000 on a small house. We will have land donations, service donations, as much as we can, that we can reduce the cost of that home. So let's say we reduce it to 160. Now that buyer, who has to qualify, would come in and obtain a mortgage with a down payment, let's say for 150. They retain that house over 5 years. The house on the free market would, let's say, go up to 245. Well, they purchased it at 160. They have a legal agreement in place with the land trust to share equity upon sale. So let's say they would take 25% of the street value. They would walk away with almost 12,000 plus whatever they paid down on the mortgage. So let's say they walk away with 20,000 in equity. We now can resell that home, which truly cost 160. They walked away with 12,000. So now it's 172. We'll put a bit of a premium for management on it. And let's say we resell it for 180. That home on the street would be 245, but we've been able to maintain affordability with the triggering all of the legal contracts in place for share equity.
Thank you for that. Seems a little complicated, but I understand, and I hope it can work.
Yeah, we're basically controlling resale costs, so that that group, person, family, couple, whoever came in with who had barriers to entry for affordable housing can now, own something and also benefit from that ownership. Unlike cooperatives, there's no asset ownership. They manage rental properties and they make decisions as a group, but they don't walk away with equity. So shared equity is quite beneficial when it comes to low and moderate income families. As an example, there's many great examples that this land trust can develop and manage.
Thank you for that.
Councillor Armour.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Through you, just how can you explain how this is different than a currently when someone has a mobile home? in a park area, and they're paying a fund for the like leasing the land, et cetera, like that. So how's this differ from that? It sounds like it's sort of the same.
Christopher, if it's okay, I'll take that.
Yeah, I
So,
can take that. Oh, sorry.
yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
So and Suzanne, maybe you can elaborate on this. But my understanding, so generally they'd be leasing the land for a for-profit, a privately owned, without the same sort of general vision and for use of community purposes. It would be a business, for-profit business. That would be, I think, the most substantial structural difference in this case.
And there's also no control on resale values. So there's no way to keep those mobile homes affordable if there's a run on mobile home parks. So there's a big difference between a not-for-profit operation and a free market operation.
Deputy Mayor Alcock?
Sorry about that. Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to follow up to Councillor Stone's question. I think, Suzanne, you did a brilliant job in responding as to how it works. That's exactly the model of what is happening on Toronto Island. And they put that model in place because there was such a controversy about people living on Toronto Island, living in a park, blah, blah, blah. So the government stepped in. Their resolution was, okay, we're gonna put control over the land in a land trust. And so in that way, and you guys own your homes, so we're not going to completely take you out of the market, but kind of. But having said that, when it comes to resale, you go through the land trust, you are able to achieve some value, some profit on your home that you've invested in and over many years or whatever, but not as much as you would if it was in the market. And in that way, it keeps the prices below the market value. So Suzanne did a brilliant job, and I just wanted to say it works. They're doing it, and they've been doing it for a number of decades now in Toronto Island.
Councillor Schumacher.
Thank you through your worship, and hi, Christopher. So yeah, I guess following up on what Councillor Stone sort of said, I get the concept, and building a brand new home, there's not going to be a lot of upkeep in the first little bit. So the resale value might be, great, but then down the road, as I say, the person who owns the home, they've put a little more in to keep that upkeep. Did they get that much more back when they do that resale, when you do the calculations?
Because it's on the, correct me if I'm wrong, Suzanne, but because it's on the market, I mean, those improvements would be on that price. It's just that when it's sold, a certain percentage of that is captured in the CLT to ensure perpetual affordability. So it would still raise the market value of the home, Councillor Schumacher, in this case. Yeah, but it would be reflected because it was being sold. It would be relative to the market rate.
No, perfect. Thank you. And just, I want to follow up and say great presentation. And I do love that you talked about diversity and inclusion. And in my 30-some up to 30 years in developmental services, I do see that is in community services, the vulnerable populations. But I do like the mix idea where you're looking at, possible pensioners who are, maybe selling their home and want to downsize. Because I think what ends up happening in our communities is you see a stigma with low rental housing sections of communities, and there is sort of that bad play that kind of comes with that. And I think doing a model like this, where you have a mix of families and it isn't just one particular group, but it's all people that need help and support, you'll get that nice mix.
If I could just follow up quickly on that comment, Councillor Schumacher. All successful land trust models that I know, and Deputy Mayor Alcock mentioned the one on Toronto Island, the one that I've done a lot of research into is the Parkdale Land Trust, which was really developed in response to gentrification. Part of what's made that so successful is it's in a very high development interest area. People want to live there. And because of that, there's a lot of mixed class housing, and that's how the funding is able to work. And that's why the community is so successful, is because it's not, it's a very diverse community. So when we say diversity, we also mean class diversity. Absolutely.
Councillor Weed.
Thanks again, Your Worship. Suzanne, maybe this is for you or either of you. So walk me through again on the builder's role in this, because it seems to me that with all the difficulty with building these days, it would be hard to get someone to build in and have them make a profit and be happy with getting involved. So explain to me again how the role of the builder, if it's the fourth pig or whomever does the work, how that kind of plays out, and how that financially and how it all plays out.
So thank you for that question, Councillor Weeb. I think that we should come back to the table when we're in project planning, so that we can explain it, because it's going to be very project specific. It's not, it's going to be one project at a time, and it's very difficult to answer that at this point in time. But again, I think the developers or the builders are going to have to share the values of a community land trust, and we're going to try very hard to attract builders in that regard, so that, you know, affordability is the bottom line here. So it might be a large developer who is going to help us on a not-for-profit basis. So we really have to network and work hard to always keep our eye on the end game, or else we can't move forward. And we have to budget this out properly. It has to be affordable. So it's a project by project basis. And when we get started with one and move forward with one, we'll come back to the table and explain it fully.
Councillor Armour.
Thank you again, Your Worship. Just one quick one. We talk about building homes, et cetera, like that. What about the infrastructure itself? Whether it's going to be on, you know, city services or putting in roads and sidewalks and stuff like that. How do you foresee that happening?
I think that it, like Suzanne was saying, that we'd want to come back with more details on a project by project basis. That being said, generally, these are places that you want in urban centers. So in centers where there are services, for the most part. They're in higher density areas. Most community land trusts are in higher density areas.
Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you. Through you to Christopher, I think. Christopher, you mentioned earlier in your presentation, or maybe it was Suzanne, that you would be looking for community-owned property to be contributing to this cause. Have you done a survey throughout Muskoka to determine just how much available property there would be for going forward with this kind of a project?
So one of our asks is actually to be able to come up with that list with the help of the lower municipalities. If we can get that list of what is available. I've spent some time on the district's GeoHub, and I find there's a lot going on. So I think that part of our ask is to have a point person in each lower municipality that we can reach out to and start making that list, Councillor Thompson.
So
Okay.
further up, if I might, Your Worship, so are you looking for then property that would be as service property as opposed to a rural kind of property then, Christopher?
That is correct, Councillor Thompson.
Yeah.
Christopher or Suzanne, just following up on that last vein. So, I mean, we have had some discussions certainly with the idea that Councillor Weeb has brought forward, and Deputy Mayor Alcock, Councillor Weeb and I have met with staff numerous times talking about that land. It's not service land. It is in the urban core, but it's not service. So if you are looking for a donation of land, is it fair to say you're looking for it to be serviced?
Ideally, I believe, thank you for that, Mayor Tarziano. I believe that ideally, whatever we can get to contribute to the construction on these projects will keep it more affordable. And if we can work in partnership with the district for services, we will certainly try hard to do so.
Okay. And I guess just a final question, as much as you're asked right now is for land and for funds, you're still in the start mode. You don't have builders on site yet. So, and I understand you're doing it project specific, but if you got to a project such as a piece of land in Huntsville, you would need to have a builder come on as part of your partnership. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mayor Terziano.
Last round, council, any further questions? I think then Suzanne and Christopher, thank you so much for the presentation. I know we've been talking about this and we'll continue to, and you know, we will be looking at your ask and seeing what we can do as a municipality for sure.
Thank you all very much for the attendance today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Okay, council, I have a resolution moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Armour, is recommended. The committee recommends the proposed road names of Lynnhaven Lane, Natessa Crescent, Paisley Avenue, Eagle Crest Avenue, Charles Morley Boulevard, Somerville Street, Hugh Conlon Crescent, Green Drive, Barnett Street, and further that bylaw 2021-52 be amended to include these names. Margaret, do you want to speak to this?
Good morning. Just here to really answer any questions. I think the report is fairly straightforward. It's a follow-up to add these names to our bylaw that we passed a few months ago for the road naming.
Okay. Council, any questions on the list of names? Councillor Stone.
Thank you. I'm curious to know why, like I know we want to identify people or honor certain people for their works in the past, but I'm questioning putting their whole name, like the Hugh Conlon. Why not Conlon? Just for the usability for the residents and everybody, rather than having 2 names or 3 names or how many are going to eventually be allowed. Why not just the last name? And then the history will, if somebody looks it up, will find out who that person actually is.
Margaret, any comment there?
Sure, thank you. During the road name review process, myself and colleagues at district and other agencies, we reviewed to make sure there's no duplication or similar sounding road names. And these ones in particular, where a first name has been added, there was some similar sounding road names throughout Muskoka. So we utilized that additional first name to help distinguish between that so that there's less confusion for that. So that's the reason in this particular case. And perhaps in many, many years into the future, perhaps it will be easier to do any kind of research on that. Just forward thinking there.
Thanks.
Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you. Through to Margaret. Margaret, so are these names been submitted as suggested for existing streets or developing streets now? And just a comment, I do like the idea of the full name, the Hugh Conlon, whatever. I think of Charlie Thompson Road in Dwight and that kind of thing, and Butter and Eggs down in Muskoka Lakes. I mean, those are neat names type of thing. So I like the idea of a compound name like that.
Councillor Weed.
Thank you, Your Worship. Really quick, I want to second that idea. I prefer the idea of full names. I think it does what you want it to do. It does put the history out front and center. And there's countless examples of it, Frank Miller and what have you. Anyway, so I think we should make more of an effort for that. So kudos.
Okay, sounds like for the most part, council's in favor of the list, so I will call the question. All in favor? And that carries. I have a cat that I can't get rid of. Okay, I have a resolution. Moved by Councillor Armour, seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. It's recommended that application RC 14-2021 HTE be approved in accordance with the original road and shore road allowance closing policy. Conditional on the applicant paying all survey, legal, and associated expenses. The sale price for the land proposed to be closed in accordance with the fee and charge bylaw is amended. A survey and duplicate be provided showing the shore road allowance as a specific portion of the plan. A registered transfer deed of land for the shore road allowance be filed with the municipality within 1 year from the date of the motion approving the application, or the motion will be considered null and void. A new application will be required. That any utility plan located on the property proposed to be closed be given an easement. The shore road allowance is hereby declared a surplus to the town needs, and the portion of the road allowance being closed merge in title with Part 6 Plan RD 356, Lot 14, Colony 13, Geographic Township of Grinnell, now in the town of Huntsville. And Jessica, did you fill council in on this one?
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor Terziano. This is a shore road allowance closing directly in front of a private property at 435 by Lock Acres Road. The property is just north of the dam on Grinnell Road. There was a previous application for this same property in 2006, and the Huntsville Parks and Trails Committee did not wish to sell the original shore road allowance at that time to keep it open for access to the public, and council denied the application. Since then, there has been other shore road allowance closure on this side of the river in this area. And this current application was circulated to staff internally and no concerns were received. Normally, if no concerns would be received, it would be a staff approval and it would be done. But given the past denial, it's before committee today.
Just before going to questions, there was actually a page 2 of this resolution. And the last line says, and further that Mayor and Clerk be hereby authorized to sign the necessary documentation pertaining to the closure and sale of said road allowance. Questions, council? Seeing none, all in favor? And that carries. Okay, we're off to new business. And the first item is community services, and a resolution moved by Councillor Schumacher, seconded by Councillor Weeb. It is recommended that staff proceed with option 1 as outlined in report CS 2021-18 for an indoor hydration water filling station with the LK EZH20 in-wall bottle filling station model LZWS M8K at a cost of $9,500 pending funding from the BIA and the hub in the amount of $9,500. And further, that staff be directed to report back should there be any changes to the project funding. Greg?
Thank you, Mayor Terziano, and good morning. And through you, this project has changed focus a number of times, and staff were asked to bring back a report specifically on the Civic Square area. So in the report, we've outlined indoor and outdoor options for committee's consideration. The outdoor option would be a seasonal option requiring a winter shutdown just due to the temperatures, and the indoor option would be able to operate 12 months of the year. And Jason Fisher and myself are here for any questions.
Deputy Mayor Alcock.
There we go. Sorry, I had a problem with my little buttons for a minute. I appreciate the report coming forward, but I really feel compelled to speak to it because I have been involved in this project since the very beginning when the hub came forward and wanted to put an O fountain. Council will remember they had proposed to put an O fountain somewhere in the town, and it would be paid for by local businesses and whatever. And so I was part of the committee with the BIA and the hub, and actually the chamber was a part of that. And we, after lots of research with the original creator of the O fountain, we realized it didn't make sense. So we then moved on to research the LK outdoor model, and it was a standalone model, not attached to the building. And we did a lot of research to suggest that this bright blue, quite an interesting water bottle filling station could sit out, not in the middle of the square, but over by the wall, but it would be standalone. And it would be something that for 3 seasons, people who attend events, and the whole purpose was to display that the town has a place where people can go and fill their water bottles. So if you're at a sporting event or any of our downtown BIA events, that this was a statement and a really important piece of our infrastructure that we would be supportive of. And so they were, as you rightly pointed out, Greg, they were proposing to pay for both the BIA and the hub for these structures. Originally it was going to be 2, and then because it was an outdoor standalone, it is pricier, and they both were supporting that. So I spoke to both yesterday after they read this report, and they were dismayed. They clearly hadn't been consulted. And so was I when I read it, because this is not at all what was discussed. The idea of putting it inside, then it doesn't become 24/7 in the seasons, right seasons, and it doesn't do the symbolism of what the other was supposed to do. The idea of having an outdoor fountain attached to the building, which adds to the cost of the installation, was never discussed. That was never part of any discussion, and none of the research was around that. It was for these standalone ones that in fact don't need to be moved inside in the winter. They need to be shut down and pipes cleared, and there are a number of things that go with that. The research was done for that. So this is not at all what I would support. It's not what was proposed. The vision was to be part of Huntsville. The town of Huntsville believes in refilling plastic water bottle, or not plastic, refilling water bottles. And so this was, as I said, I talked to both BIA and the hub yesterday. They can't support it. They won't support it. The funding will not be there for this particular option. So council needs to know that. So if you do support this, you do not have the support of the original people who started the idea going, and which is why I was involved. I thought this was a really important part of council's environmental strategic plan, that we wanted to show that we're not big fans of plastic water bottles. And so this was a statement piece, and what was being proposed now, as I said, no longer has the support of the funders and has lost the vision. So I'm not quite sure how it got. I think you made reference, rightly so, Greg, that it's changed focus a number of times along the way, and I get that. And I believe staff who started working on it are no longer, and so there are all sorts of reasons. But having said that, it has lost the original vision. And for that reason, I can't support this recommendation. I would, if I had my druthers, I would propose that we send it back and we look at that other option that was being proposed and was being supported by both the BIA and the hub, because that's missing from this note.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I'm going to go to the CAO because she has her hand up, and I will come back to council in a minute.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So with respect to the conversations that took place, I do know that Mr. Pilling had been in touch with the BIA, and I believe the recommendation at that time was because the scope of the project had changed from initially what was requested, that staff actually come to committee just with the proposals, and then those proposals would then be considered by the BIA. So I do apologize if there was some miscommunication there, but we did have conversations with them. I think secondly, Madam Chair, if you would permit Director Hernan to speak to the matter with respect to the water and the requirements for fountains. And I'm not 100% familiar, Deputy Mayor Alcock, on how these systems work. I'm not an expert in water fountains, but it's my understanding that there is, I'm not sure if the system you're proposing actually hooks into the municipal system with respect to water that's disregarded. It does hook into the system. So I know that Director Hernan had done a lot of work with respect to how the water had to flow and where it had to be disposed of. So based on that and the fact that I guess this information was presented to the Deputy Mayor yesterday and staff haven't received it, Madam Chair, I think it would be very feasible if the matter was deferred back to staff for further investigation, and then we could present all of the information to committee. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I received the same correspondence that Deputy Mayor Alcock received, and the parties definitely don't support this. So I think it does need to go back, but let's finish up with the questions first. Councillor Withey, I think you are next.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess, I mean, I'll be brief, but I completely concur with Deputy Mayor Alcock on this. I think regardless of some of these hurdles, I think the whole idea was to have this as she said, as a statement and accessible, other than open hours of the building. So I understand where we're moving with this. I would not support this as it is, but I guess we'll hear some more. So I'll just leave it at that. But I agree with the Deputy Mayor. Thanks.
Councillor Schumacher.
And again, through you, Chair Terziano, brief. I mean, I was involved as much as with Deputy Mayor Alcock because we worked from the accessibility point of view of what, that's why we didn't go with the O fountain. It wasn't able for somebody in a wheelchair to be able to maneuver around it and be able to push a button and have it. We went with the Elky because it does have that sensor ability for someone who has an issue with their hands and can't hold a bottle and try to push a button all at the same time. So we've done a lot of research from an accessibility piece as to what was going to be the one that would work well.
Councillor Weed.
Thank you, Your Worship. A quick question, and that is, regardless of how this transpires, is the water that's going to be available at any one of these stations, is it going to be municipal water, or will it be some sort of like a treated water or a really pure water? Because I think, if I recall, the original spirit as well from the O was that it was this water set a higher standard for purity and clarity, etc. I know a lot of people have issue with the chlorine levels in municipal water. I mean, I know why it's there; it's for safety, etc. But it's sometimes doesn't taste the greatest. So to have really great pure water is, again, I think, part of the spirit of it. So the question is, what's going to be the source of the water in the end for whatever we choose, however this goes forward.
Mr. Nagy, I'm guessing you have the answer to that. Chris?
Yeah, Mayor Terziano, sorry, with respect to connecting it with the actual, the fountain with the actual supply water would be, to my understanding, the public connection. Sorry, does that answer Councillor Weeb's question?
Can I follow up quick?
Yep, you can.
Okay, so my follow-up would be, is the Elke, the new unit that's being proposed, what type of filtration, or what's the process of treating that water through that system?
Director Hernan?
Thank you, Mayor Terziano. When the O fountain was proposed, they were talking about putting a filtering system in that would remove the chlorine, which is a disinfectant, if you will. When I had a discussion with the District of Muskoka Water and Sewer, they were advising against that. They said that the chlorine is there to make the water safe. It does have a smell, but it's safe to drink. And they were strongly advising against the municipality from removing anything that they do to make the water safe. And it pointed out that if we do decide to put filters on and remove it, the municipality would be fully responsible for the water received out of that fountain. So their advice from the staff at Water and Sewer was don't remove any of the stuff they put in to make the water safe, because that's what they do, is they guarantee the water is safe, and the filtering system would do the opposite, and that we would be the sole owner of that responsibility, if you will, if we started to do that. So that was something we pointed out to the group that was working on the O fountains, and the accessibility features, as well as Councillor Schumacher has indicated. And that's where it was sort of left, because it was like, is this the right fountain?
Deputy Mayor Alcock.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to add to that. Councillor Weeb, you're absolutely bang on. It was a big issue around the O fountain, as Director Hernan said. And after the discussions, it sort of upset a couple of the members, because they felt it was really important to have, pure water. But given the district's response, and it was weighed at the time, well, do we proceed with this standalone kind of colorful fountain, even if it is connected to the chlorine water, or abandon it? And they chose to proceed. It was too important, and they chose, all right, we'll hook up and do what we need to do. So that was one of the, I think, first sacrifices that they, other than the O fountain itself, that they felt, no, let's proceed with something that will work, and we'll do what the district wants to do. But you're bang on, it was a really big issue at one point.
Councillor Thompson.
I'm not sure if you just called me or not.
I did.
Terziano, but
I did.
My connection is really, thank you. My connection is so unstable this morning. A lot of the comments I'm hearing are breaking up. I think I'm generally getting the gist of things that are going on, but sometimes it's very unstable today. With regards to Councillor Weeb's comments, and I totally appreciate what he's saying. But I also appreciate what Director Hernan is saying with regards to the safety issue of this. But for those who are concerned about that, you can buy nowadays personal water bottles that have their own filtration system in there to take that taste out of them. Actually, Brita supplies that kind of a personal water bottle for anyone that has that kind of a problem with chlorine in the water. That's all I have to say. I hope it came through.
You came through. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mayor Terziano. I tend to agree with Deputy Mayor Alcock that we should send this back. It doesn't seem to have the true defining elements that the project originally was set upon. So I'd really like to see an option with it year round. I cannot believe for a minute that there's not reasonably attainably priced technology to allow us to have a year round water fountain. So That's what I'd like to see come back. Thank you.
Councillor Armour?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with everybody. Obviously, we got to send this back, but I think, excuse me, it'd be nice to send it back with a, or at least have a budget number here, because when you look at the cost of these things, as high as almost $40,000 for a water fountain, what would be the shared costs on this? This BIA and Hub going to pay for it all, or is it going to be a shared cost? Because I think it's something we need to consider too.
Deputy Mayor Alcock?
Thank you. I know that the BIA was originally in for $10,000. And then the Hub also had 2 investors that wanted to be part of it. So I think the way it was landing on this particular, because it was one, I think it was $5,000 each, 5 from BIA and 5 from the Hub. But as I said, originally they were looking, I believe the BIA's commitment was up to $10,000. So they were quite serious, and those budget numbers, Councillor Armour, started way back with the proposal around the O fountain. So that's what they were basing the numbers on, and then it moved from that to the LK system. And the one fountain that they looked at, I believe, was about $9,500 for the one that Councillor Schumacher was referencing, that we did does this work for in the accessibility community, right? So that's where those numbers came from.
Okay, Crystal, if you're there, is there a way that we table this, or what's the proper way to do this? I would suggest that staff take this back, consider the comments that have been provided by the Hub and the BIA, and potentially work with both of those organizations, and maybe Deputy Mayor Alcock to bring back options that are agreeable to the people who are willing to fund this. Crystal, can we just table it, or?
So I'm just working on a motion as you're speaking there. At this time, I would recommend postponing it with some further direction. I do have something drafted if you'd like me to pull it up, and you can let me know if you'd like some changes to it, if that works.
That would be great, thanks. So I'm going to put moved by Deputy Mayor Alcock and seconded by Councillor Weeb. I think they both spoke in favor of sending this back. It is recommended that report CS 2021-18 hydration water filling station at Civic Square be postponed to allow for further staff investigation into the project for a year-round outdoor fountain installation and partnership commitments. I guess I will ask council if that meets the needs. I guess it leaves it wide open to bring back all options, but I think it's very important that staff work with the Deputy Mayor, the Hub, and the BIA before coming back with further recommendations. All in favor? That carries. Thanks, Crystal. Crystal also noted that I missed something on the agenda just before we got to this one, and that was 6.1.3 budget and financial control policy discussion. There's nothing in your package, but we did, I believe, ask about the $25,000 increase to any capital project without council approval, which was the number that was in our policy. And I think the treasurer, the director of finance, has confirmed that that indeed is what the policy says. So I think the discussion is whether we want to provide direction to change that or not. Julia, do you want to speak to it, or are you just looking for direction?
I guess I'd be looking for some direction. We did bring back the budget and financial controls policy that we're using today. back in 2019. We have had a few revisions on it, but when we brought that back, it actually replaced two other policies, the budget reporting capital and budget reporting operating. And both of those policies had the thresholds that had a dollar amount and a percentage amount. So we did have that in place before, and we actually, when we have our new policy put forward, we removed it. And some of the reasons that we did take the percentage threshold out was just high level here. So for larger projects, the minimum threshold for a deviation was considered, staff was considering that to be too high of a dollar value for the approval. So if it was a large project, it could be a significant variance that would be approved without having further council approval. For smaller projects, the threshold could be really low, so that we were bringing back a lot of reports back on deviations. So just so that council wasn't spending a lot of time on these minor amounts. The current thresholds limit the number of projects that could be potentially put on hold, and it could be up to 2 months now because of our committee cycle before we can proceed with the work. Or also reduce the number of special meetings that we would need if we are going out for procurement on those ones. So we did think that the 25 for the larger projects was pretty conservative as a threshold. We still think it provides the transparency needed to the public and to council. And it's also important to note too that any changes to projects must still be reported to council and committee in a timely manner. So when we do our quarterly reports, we would have the change and the source of financing in there. So I don't know if that clarifies anything or not. If there's any other questions.
I think one of the things, and I think it was the example that Councillor Fitzgerald used at the last meeting, is that the policy allows you to go ahead and raise a $10,000 project to $35,000 and then just report it as a deviation. And common sense doesn't say that's a good policy, so explain to me how we avoid something like that.
So with the common sense part, we'd be relying on the common sense of our management and also the director, the CAO, and the treasurer, because we would all have to be looking at that and making sure it did make sense. So obviously, if it was a project that didn't make sense, we were spending that much money on it, we would go back and really question that, why we were doing that. And so it does have to be approved by all those people. Also, there has to be funding available. So, you know, if somebody's under by one project, maybe we overestimated on one project and underestimated on the other. We do our capital asset plans based on estimates. So we don't really know the true amounts of some of them until we go for tender, or actually go to get the prices for them. So we do have variances up and down all the time, which is normal. But again, I would just really stress that it does have to go through a few layers before it would just get approved to proceed.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mayor Terziano, and thanks, Julia. I know we've discussed this not at length, but we've gone into it deep enough that everyone, I think, understands it. The common sense thing scares me a little bit, and not for the staff that are currently on screen, but we don't know if someone's mid-project and perhaps as an exit plan or whatever, and all of a sudden we're on the hook for something that's a reasonable project. And I don't know if the policy is thorough enough that it needs director approval, or what if it's a director? All of a sudden then we're on the hook for, like the mayor said, a $35,000 project that should be a $5,000 project. So I think we need to rely on staff for common sense, but I think that as a precautionary measure, we can't do that. So we need to come up with a policy that doesn't allow that to happen for whatever reason.
Julia?
Sorry, I just wanted to add to that too. We also have a procurement policy in place too that limits the dollar amounts that people can commit to. So I cannot commit to, you know, a $500,000 expenditure without having a lot of approvals in place. There has to be a budget for it. There has to be approval by the CAO, and it goes down. It goes all the way down the chain, so that you know, you might have a manager that only has, say, $5,000 of approval. So they can't actually even, they can't even actually purchase anything above $5,000 without their, whatever their approvals are set up. So it might be their director or another manager ahead of them. So there's quite a few layers of approvals that need to happen before a purchase is even made. And that's all outlined in our procurement policy. And then we also have the procurement policies at the high level. So mainly the director level, but then we also have lists within our finance system that have what each individual staff member's approvals are. And some staff don't have any approval for purchases. So there is quite a few levels in there. One other thing I just wanted to point out too, just with the change in the value, we also have in the policy just that if there's a significant change in scope of the project, that also needs to be approved by council. Because if we have something in the budget that is for a specific project, we can't just change the scope of that project. That would need to go back to council for approval.
Councillor Fitzgerald?
Thank you, Mayor Terziano. I apologize, Julia. I lost half of your statement there due to poor connection. So I don't know how we handle that.
I think I get everything you're saying, Julia, but at the end of the day, we are governed by policies and bylaws and procedures. And if we do have a wild card staff person someday down the street that goes out and does this expenditure, it's going to come back to council and say, well, you approved the policy back in 2019. So I think what we're saying is this policy can be approved upon, and that, you know, there could be a threshold for projects under a certain amount and a threshold for projects over. I realize 25,000 isn't a lot on a $500,000 project, but it is on even a $25,000 one. So I'm not sure why we can't get a policy that separates some of these out. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to make sure that we're addressing what issue is at hand here. So what I'm hearing is that there's concern that staff can make purchases outside of their limits. That's kind of what I'm hearing is the issue that we just need to address. So I'm just wondering if maybe we bring back in the new year just a fulsome review of how all of our approvals are in place, so that council or committee is aware of all the safeguards that we do have in place, because we're pretty proud of all the safeguards that we have to protect council against that exact thing happening. So I don't know if that would be helpful if we could bring that back.
Councillor Weed?
Thank you, Worship. That would be helpful. But I also think going back to what Councillor Fitzgerald, his original thoughts, and that was, I think, not so much in purchasing and procurement, but more like when projects are midway, sometimes things go a little bit sideways, and without the right kind of safeguards, there could be worry that more leeway is given, or things are contracted out that maybe shouldn't have been, and the prices have ballooned without any safeguards in place. So I think that's more something to consider as well, just as we come back in the new year with having a more fulsome look at it.
Councillor Fitzgerald?
Thank you, Mayor Terziano. Yeah, I would love to see that information come back, and it would be nice to see at what level, what parameters people have. And I believe Councillor Weeb's comment was very accurate about my concerns, and I appreciated the mayor's comments about the wild card. So I would love to see the safeguards. I know that staff has done a lot of work, and we approved this in 2019, and we maybe just want to make sure that we're covering all the bases. And I think that if we get that information back, it would be great for us to see whether we need to do any changes or not. So thank you, staff, for that, and I look forward to the report.
Do we require a resolution, or are staff clear with what's being requested? Crystal, do we need a resolution?
I do have one prepared if you would like a resolution on the books. Yes.
Sure, let's do one.
I'll share my screen now. Are you able to see that?
Yes, let's go. Moved by Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by Councillor Weave. It is recommended that staff be directed to bring back a full review of the safe holds in place regarding procurement and purchase.
I'm sorry, I can't see anything.
I think I'm back. I just lost my internet. Am I back?
You
Okay.
are, yes, I do believe we're having some connection issues right now.
I know I didn't finish reading that, but were there any questions on that resolution? Councillor Weave.
Thank you, Worship. So there's the procurement purchasing element of it, but is there also an element of just contracting out services? Because that can be pricey as well, right?
Yeah, perhaps it should have said the actual budget and control financial policy that we're actually dealing with. The budget and financial control policy be brought back.
Unless the procurement covers that, that word covers it.
Does it cover what we're looking at, Julia? Go ahead.
Sorry, my Zoom went out on me there. Yes, there's a few different policies, there's a few different aspects. So I'm happy with that resolution, because I think then it encompasses all the other policies that we can kind of bring forward to help explain all that.
Okay. I'll call a question then. All in favor? Carries, I think. Let me do that again. All in favor? And that carries. Okay. Council, we've got two more reports before budget, so let's try to get through those and then we'll have a quick break. We're into development services, and I have a report on administrative monetary penalties. Moved by Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by Councillor Stone. It is recommended the staff be directed to report back to General Committee in 2022 with a draft administrative monetary penalty bylaw for consideration within all bylaws that currently contain the necessary short form wording. And further, that staff be directed to create a policy related to the appointment of screening and hearing officers. Andrew, tell us what this is all about.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My pleasure. So this administrative monetary penalty program is a different way of enforcement. Right now, we have the ability to issue what's called a Part 1. A Part 1 is the same sort of ticket you would receive from a police officer for things like speeding or not wearing a seatbelt. A Part 2 is a parking ticket, which is mentioned in the report. This is where the whole administrative monetary penalty program started, is with parking tickets. A lot of municipalities issue a lot of parking tickets, and they're anywhere on average $25, $50. For a person who receives that, they have the option to fight that ticket, to fight the parking ticket, take it to court, and represent themselves, or hire someone to represent them for them, which costs the municipality a lot of time and a lot of money for something like a $25 parking ticket. Now, the person who has that parking ticket absolutely has the right to fight the ticket, have their day in court. This is a little different way of doing the same thing. Right now, the report does speak to parking tickets, but my hope is to not get into parking tickets just yet. We want to try this out as a alternative to issuing a Part 1 ticket, where there's a certain process you have to follow in issuing a Part 1 ticket. And the biggest obstacle is you have to be in front of that person. You have to give it to that person who has contravened a bylaw. We do have difficulties with that in tracking down the person or the person responsible to hand them physically the ticket. This way, with sufficient evidence from a complainant, we can actually fill out the administrative penalty and send it in the mail. There are several sections of the Municipal Act that gives the municipality authority And there's other sections that say once that an administrative monetary penalty has been put in the mail, either regular mail or by courier or oh, there's one more, I can't think of what it's called. But after 5 days, that notice is considered delivered. So there is no longer the need to be in front of the person to issue the fine. We can send it in the mail. The biggest advantage to the municipality is it keeps us out of the courts. It just went through a very lengthy court process with several charges, and it was, for lack of a better term, costly. This way, everything is handled in-house. There are stipulations as to timelines once the administrative penalty has been issued to the person then has options, and if they wish to take advantage of those options, they have to make their intentions known. So part of that involves a screening officer, which is the first step. That person would look at the ticket. They could hear from the person who has received it. Sorry, I said ticket, I should have said monetary penalty. And then makes a decision as to, is there sufficient evidence? Does this stick? Is it going to stay? They have the ability to give more time to pay and outright cancel the monetary penalty. If the decision by the screening officer is to have that ticket be okay, sort of thing, then they have the option to go to a hearings officer, which is the next step. There are timelines with that. They have so many days to make their intentions known, and the screening officer can confirm the decision of the hearing officer. They can give the person an extension to pay, or again, cancel it on the spot, and then it's over and done with. Sounds like a lot. There is a bit of a flow to it, and if anyone has any questions, I will try to answer them.
Okay, we'll start with Deputy Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Andrew, for the presentation. It sounds like, I think you made reference in your note that you looked at, there are a number of other cities and towns that are doing this, and they're having great success with it. That's the implication? And you may have said that in your presentation, and I apologize if I missed it.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, there are several other municipalities who have done this. I found out about this whole system almost 2 years ago, so it's not something that I jumped into. I did look into it, did a lot of research, did a lot of reading. The biggest one I found was the City of Waterloo and Kitchener. They actually have shared services for the screening and hearing officer, and they set, I'm not sure if it's once a week, twice a week, or once a month, and they'll do all the screenings at once, and then vice versa, all the hearings at once. But they do share the services between the two of them. Township of Lake of Bays is in the process of having everything done similar to us, except they are going to go the route of parking tickets. Right now, I'm going to lean away from that and get this set up and in place, and let's see how it goes, sort of idea.
Councillor Armour? You're on mute. You're on mute.
Yeah, I'm not on mute. I think I'm losing my internet here back and forth. Anyhow, so through you, Madam Chair. So a burning infraction, for example, that would that be something you could put through the system, or is it specific to what type of infraction would it be?
Through you, Madam Chair, Councillor Armour, yes, definitely, like a burning infraction. But keep in mind, we do need sufficient evidence. We just can't take, a phone call or someone coming to the front counter complaining and saying, someone's done this, someone's burning during the daytime. So either we need to go out and find that, or they need to give us some sort of evidence, and pictures are always the best way of doing that. So when it comes to any other bylaw infraction, in order to write a Part 1 ticket, you need what's called short form wording. So in the bylaw, it'll say no person shall conduct an open air burning between the hours of 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. That gets turned into the short form wording of burning during prohibited time. We need that short form wording to put on the administrative penalty as well. I can think of maybe two bylaws that we don't really have a lot to do with enforcement wise that don't have wording like that. But any other bylaws definitely have that short form wording. It's approved by the Minister of the Solicitor General for the wording that, yes, the bylaw creates an offense, and yes, you have the proper wording.
Okay, if I don't see any other questions, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? That carries. And council, I'm actually going to suggest we take our break now because I just lost internet again and everybody seems to be quite unstable. Let's take 15 minutes and maybe the weather will settle down and we'll come back. So it's 10:26. Let's come back at 10:40. Sound good? Okay.
It appears that we're having some issues with people logging on. So we do apologize for the disruption. And it actually looks like, and I do know that we're live, but just wanted to let those who potentially are watching the meeting that we are having some issues with respect to internet. And I would ask for those of you who are able to join the meeting, maybe we can turn our cameras off until such time that we receive notice from the clerk. Thank you. I just did a Sorry, good morning, everyone. We are continuing to have some technical difficulties. The clerks have requested that everyone log off from this session and await an email from the clerk's department. So if you are currently on the call, I would ask that you leave the call and wait further direction. Thank you.